Yes? Yes, yes? All right, so Chris is someone I've known through the years, but he's definitely someone who's had my back. I appreciate it. It's really interesting on who's in the room. There's been a lot of people that have had my back, and so it's awesome. So I wanted you to share a little bit about your story, so maybe take 5 or 6 minutes to kind of share, because you got a pretty powerful message.
Yeah, do you have a microphone?
Yeah, there is a microphone. Oh, here.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to share with you my story of spending 19 months in federal prison. August 7th. Yeah, that'd be great if we can. Actually, I don't need the PowerPoints. It's fine. August 7th, 2013. I was flying in from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with my beautiful Colombian girlfriend. We had just been traveling the world, and we had a 6-month world tour planned out. And I was running 3 distributed companies at the time. And we land in LAX. The plane is taxiing on the tarmac. All of a sudden, an announcement comes over the loudspeaker. And they say, "Hold on, everybody. Customs needs to come on board." The next thing I know, there's this big black guy walking down the aisle. He stops right next to my chair. I look up. He goes, "Christopher Wise?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You're under arrest." Next thing I know, they're handcuffing me and walking me off the plane. I'm wide-eyed. Everybody's staring at me. We happen to be in the back, and I'm feeling like a terrorist. I'm like, are you guys sure you have the right Christopher Wise? Because I couldn't imagine what I had done. The next thing I know, they're handing me off to the Secret Service. Now I'm like, what is going on? Finally, they tell me that I'm being charged with conspiracy for bank fraud. Then it all comes back to me. 3 years before, I had hired a company to help me get a loan. Come to find out, they had done things fraudulently. But because I had hired them and followed their instructions, I got indicted. Because I was an expert in the industry on business funding, and I had spoken about this company from stage and referred them business, they wanted to make an example out of me. I didn't have the money to hire a real attorney, the $100,000 that would have taken to really fight the case. So I worked with a public defender, and my easiest way out seemed to be a plea deal. So I found myself in prison, 19 months. Now, what I'm sharing with you is actually very vulnerable for me. It's been hard for me to share this because people might judge me or shame. I've had a lot of shame about what's happened, there's a lot of vulnerability here in just sharing this. And now in prison, vulnerability is not okay, because if you're vulnerable, then you're viewed as weak, and if you're viewed as weak, then you can be taken advantage of. Now, prior to going into prison, I actually had a lot of Krav Maga and Taekwondo training, but I made the decision to not go through prison responding to violence with violence. Now, prison is a hyper-masculine environment, and the threat of violence is always present. And so what people do to feel safe, so in prison there's all these different emotions coming up: sadness, fear, loneliness. Your whole life is falling apart and everybody's feeling this. But because it's not okay to be vulnerable, people put up these walls of defensiveness and toughness, and then they take on prison names, and then they group together by their race to feel safe. And then they make up all kinds of crazy rules about how to interrelate with other races, like, oh, if you're white, then you can't do business with the blacks. Or if you're white, you can't sit with the Mexicans. Like, crazy stuff. And none of this made sense to me, because I was like, well, I'm a human being, you're a human being, we're both going through a difficult time, so let's make the best of it. I'm going to treat you with respect and kindness. Now, this was very disruptive to the prison system. And there were certain people that really ended up hating me for this. Now, so in the back of my mind, I wondered, well, what would I do if somebody tried to fight me? Now, prior to going into prison, I had learned this practice about loving my own heart. Now, when I say that, think of your 5-year-old little boy inside, or little girl, that innocence. Or you could also think about it as your heart space. And so this practice was, and I did this prior to going to prison, was to my own heart, my own little 5-year-old little boy, I would say the words, "I love you. I love you. I love you." And so I would just do this over and over. Now, in prison, I had a lot of time. And so I would spend 2 to 4 hours a day loving my own heart and meditating. So one day I was sitting in my cell and I was like, well, what would I do if somebody tried to fight me? Then it came to me, I wonder what would happen if I told somebody I loved them that was trying to fight me. Well, I actually had the chance to find out what would happen. So one day I'm playing cards with this old man, and he's kind of a little emotionally unstable. I don't remember what exactly set him off. I might have beat him at a hand of cards. But all of a sudden, he stands up. So we're playing cards. He stands up and he goes, come on, let's fight right now. This is like in the lunchroom, other people around. I stand up, I look him in the eyes, and I go, I love you. I love you. Like full masculine presence. All of a sudden, he's like, turns and walks away. I mean, it was incredible. Now, not every, I had another run-in with violence. It didn't turn out as well. There was I can tell you the story another time, and I've written a short story. I think there will eventually be a book that comes out of this, but with a run-in with a white supremacist, it didn't turn out as well. But in feeling all of this emotion that was coming up in prison, another key thing that happened in prison was letting go. So another key thing that I did in prison was just letting go, right? Because my whole life I had been driven. Like, I'm going to go out and accomplish this. I was chasing and pursuing life. And in prison, like, I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere. My whole life is falling apart. And I felt like the only way I could keep my sanity was to so deeply and completely surrender and let go. Let go of outcomes. Let go of trying to control outcomes. Let go of trying to control how much time I was going to get sentenced to, or what was going to happen to my businesses, or what was going to happen to my relationships. And it was through letting go that has so deeply began to shift, now being outside of prison, that has been so deeply beginning to shift how my relationship to life is. To no longer do I feel like I am pursuing life, that now there's a shift occurring where life is pursuing me. And that shift is occurring through letting go of outcomes. So if there's one thing that I leave you with, it's this practice. And it's something that it's just so simple and it's so easy that you can do. And it's loving your own inner child, loving your heart. And if you would like to do this with me right now, you just put your hand on your heart, to your own heart, and just say the words, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And so with that practice, I encourage you to do that every day. I've done a lot of personal development work. This has been the most transformational practice that I have ever done, because I feel like it just cuts right to the core, because you can't give what you don't have. And the more deeply that you love yourself, you will just naturally show up more loving, giving, and present with other people. Thank you.